My father mocked me at his birthday for being just a teacher until his banker revealed I funded his 3.5 matter loan. I'm Elena Moreno. I'm 33 years old, a high school history teacher, and today I'm sitting in my silver Toyota Corolla, parked halfway down my father's long circular driveway. I have been staring at the front of his massive Mediterranean-style house for the last 10 minutes, trying to summon the energy to walk through that front door and survive the next 4 hours. Inside, they're all waiting. My siblings, my father, the old family friends, his golf buddies, their well-dressed wives, the realtors, lawyers, and bankers that orbit his social universe. It's his 70th birthday tonight, and they've thrown him a party fit for a local celebrity, which in his world he is. Franklin Moreno, self-made, ruthless, successful. A man who worked his way from selling insurance policies in his 20s to owning a regional property development firm and several legacy investments he likes to boast about. To him, success isn't just about numbers. It's about being seen succeeding. It's about control, presence, a room that stands still when you walk in, the kind of presence I've never had. I tighten my grip on the steering wheel, watching through the windshield as luxury vehicles pull up and unload perfectly dressed people. My older brother Anthony arrived earlier in his Bentley, no doubt, with his stunning fiancée, whose name I can never remember. My younger sister Marissa likely showed up in that black Range Rover she leased the same week she got promoted at her hedge fund. And me, I'm in a 10-year-old Corolla with a cracked dashboard and a reusable Trader Joe's tote in the back seat, still filled with graded midterm essays. A laugh bubbles up in my throat before I can stop it. I can already hear my father's voice tonight, lifting his whiskey glass with that effortless smile, saying something like, "Some kids become CEOs, some become public servants with summers off." It's the kind of line that will make the room chuckle politely, thinking it's harmless, a light jab, a family joke. But they won't know that it's the 20th time he said it and that each time it slices a little deeper. They won't know that when he says public servant, he doesn't mean it with pride. He means it like a shortcoming. Like I never quite made it. They don't see the real me. Not really. They see what I drive, where I live, what I wear. They hear teacher and picture outdated blouses and a single-bedroom apartment in the suburbs. They assume I spend my nights grading papers and reheating leftovers while they toast to acquisitions and IPOs. They don't know about the other life I lead, the one I've never spoken about in that house. I reach for my phone and pull up the calendar app. A reminder flashes: conference call, Bapwas UN Education Impact Fund, Monday, 9 a.m. I swipe it away. For now, I am not Elena Moreno's silent investor in multiple international education initiatives. I am not the founder of an anonymous scholarship fund that has put hundreds of underserved students through college. I am not the woman who, through a private holding account, funded a $3.5 million bridge loan that kept her father's company afloat during last year's commercial real estate crash. No. Tonight I'm just Elena, the teacher, the quiet one. The one they forget to introduce properly. The one who gets a hug from Dad that's slightly less tight, a smile from Marissa that doesn't quite reach her eyes, and a pat on the shoulder from Anthony like I'm a well-meaning assistant. I glance in the rearview mirror. My hair is simple today, brushed into a neat bun. I'm wearing a dark green dress, clean and pressed but understated. No labels. No flash. A pair of flat shoes I can actually walk in. I already know someone will say, "You look comfortable," and they'll mean it as an insult wrapped in kindness. Part of me wants to drive away. I could turn right onto the main road and disappear into the evening. Go home, order takeout, watch that documentary I've been meaning to finish. But I won't, because I know how this story ends. I take one last deep breath and grab the gift bag from the passenger seat. Inside is a rare first edition book, Team of Rivals by Doris Kearns Goodwin. My father loves Lincoln, or at least he used to. It's wrapped in neutral tissue paper with a navy blue ribbon. I step out of the car. The warm California breeze brushes my cheeks, carrying with it the scent of jasmine and charcoal from the outdoor grill. Laughter drifts from the open patio, where glowing lanterns hang from the trellises and strings of white lights wind through the olive trees. I walk toward the entrance, past valets in black vests, servers with silver trays, and neighbors who nod at me without recognizing who I am. Inside the front door, the house bursts with energy, people clinking glasses, exchanging compliments, comparing vacation homes. Everyone looks polished, practiced, precisely placed. Ms. Moreno, the event planner, chirps as I enter. She doesn't know which Moreno I am, but I smile and nod anyway. Coat, she asks. No coat, I say. Bars to the right, hors d'oeuvres are out back. Mr. Moreno's giving his toast in 20 minutes. Perfect. I weave through the crowd, eyes, scanning for my siblings, my parents. No one's noticed me yet, as always. I pause near the back staircase, the one that leads to the den where I used to read after dinner, while the rest of the family watched CNBC or Fox Business on full volume. I remember once in high school, I won a regional writing competition and tried to show my father the certificate. He said, "That's nice, but it's not like a math award, is it? That certificate is still in my apartment." Framed. Elena. A voice calls out from somewhere across the room. I turn and my mother is waving politely her hand, already ushering me over like she's correcting a misplaced detail. She's dressed immaculately in a champagne-colored gown, her blonde hair styled in soft curls, gold earrings sparkling under the chandelier. I walk toward her, adjusting the gift bag in my hand, already bracing myself. "Elena, sweetheart," she air kisses both sides of my face. "You look lovely." There it is. The pause. The faint surprise that I didn't show up in sweatpants. "Thanks, Mom," I say quietly. She glances at my dress again, eyes flicking down to my flats, and then motions toward the bar. "You must be thirsty. Go grab something. Your father will want to see you before he speaks." I nod, stepping past her into the blur of conversations, champagne and symphony quartets. Let the performance begin. I weave through the crowd, sidestepping a waiter with a tray of lobster canapes and head toward the back of the house. The voices blend together, finance talk, golf scores, someone complaining about interest rates. I'm not sure why I thought this would be any different than every other family gathering. Maybe part of me still hopes that someday I'll walk into this house and be seen for who I am, not just who I'm not. I pause near the French doors that open onto the patio. It's quieter here. Just the faint hum of the string quartet playing something classical and upbeat. I sip my wine, letting the citrusy Sauvignon Blanc chill the inside of my mouth. That's when I spot them. Anthony, my older brother, stands near the outdoor bar, gesturing with his drink as he tells a story to a group of his friends. His voice is confident, booming with the practiced charm of a man who's never had to question whether he belonged in any room. His navy suit fits perfectly. He's always had that gift looking like he knows where he's going, even when he doesn't. Standing beside him is his fiancée Madison, a real estate agent who sells homes with 6-car garages and waterfall kitchen islands. She looks every bit the part, tonight's sleek, black dress hair pulled back in a low bun, perfectly neutral lipstick. I think the last time we spoke, she asked me if I'd considered transitioning into corporate training. You know, since teaching basically overlaps with leadership. I didn't correct her. What would have been the point? A little further down, I spot Marissa, my younger sister. She's leaning against the stone railing, laughing with a client from her firm. Marissa works in private equity and is apparently very good at it. She moves through the world like someone who expects to be celebrated. And usually she is. She and I used to be close. When we were kids, we shared a room, a love for detective novels, and a secret stash of Halloween candy that we swore we'd never tell Mom about. But somewhere between her promotion to senior partner and my decision to teach public school, we drifted. Or maybe she pulled away. Maybe I did. I glance toward the far end of the patio where the birthday banners hang between olive trees, and I see him, my father Franklin. He's in his element, laughing with a local councilman and one of his golfing buddies. His shoulders are square posture proud. You'd never know he nearly lost everything 9 months ago. They don't know. None of them do. 9 months ago, in a desperate scramble to stay liquid, my father's company took out a bridge loan. Quiet, confidential, arranged through a private investor fund designed for education-aligned portfolios. A holding company I set up years ago. He never knew it was me. It was never about revenge or leverage. It was about not letting him lose what he built, because even after all the slights, the jokes, the absence of interest in my world, I still didn't want to see him fail. That's the twisted thing about family. We hurt. We give. We stay. When I first started teaching at Midtown High, I barely had enough in my bank account to buy new shoes. I was 25, working overtime, tutoring after school, eating ramen twice a week. But I loved it being in the classroom watching a kid's eyes light up when they finally understood the Louisiana Purchase or the Reconstruction Amendments. It gave me purpose. But what no one in my family ever saw was that while I taught, I also built. In the early years, I spent weekends attending education tech meetups and nonprofit funding seminars. I taught myself the basics of portfolio management. I researched impact investing. I read until 2 a.m., building the foundation of a private investment fund that would eventually channel capital into underserved school districts' teacher support programs and educational infrastructure. I called it the Lantern Fund because I liked the idea of light-reaching places that had long been overlooked. The fund grew, quietly, steadily. By the time I was 30, I had made 6 figures in passive returns and had reinvested nearly all of it back into rural school projects across the Midwest. No one in my family knew. Not because I was hiding it, but because they never asked. When I mentioned I was going to DC for a policy panel, Anthony asked if it was a field trip. When I once said I had a conference in Brussels, Marissa raised an eyebrow and said, "Oh wow, they send teachers to Europe now." When I tried to explain the Lantern Fund to my father at dinner 3 years ago, he listened for about 20 seconds before saying, "That's cute. You've got a little side hustle. Good for you." That conversation ended when dessert was served. I finished my wine and placed the empty glass on a tray that passes by. Through the open patio doors, I hear my mother's voice rise above the music, politely but urgently calling everyone inside. "Everyone, please, let's gather in the dining room. Franklin's going to say a few words." The moment is here, the toast, the spotlight, the performance, and I already know how it will go. He'll thank Anthony for expanding his tech portfolio. He'll thank Marissa for introducing him to the Harringtons. He'll probably thank Madison for helping sell that ridiculous waterfront property. And me? He'll smile in my direction and maybe say something about the noble profession of teaching, followed by that same tired joke. I've heard it before. I can hear it already. I inhale, hold it, and step back inside, where the crowd has begun to settle into chairs, holding champagne flutes and smiling expectantly toward the head of the long dining table. And just like that, the story begins again. The dining room looks like something out of a wedding catalog: white linen tablecloths, polished silverware, crystal glasses catching the warm glow of candles flickering in ornate candelabras. My mother always knew how to set a table that made people feel like they'd arrived somewhere important. Long banquet tables stretch end to end, forming a giant U-shape that wraps around the center of the room. At the head of the table sits a gleaming mahogany chair with a slightly taller back, subtly suggesting who tonight is really about. Franklin Moreno, father-host patriarch success story. He hasn't sat down yet. He's still working the room like a politician, his laughter bouncing off the high ceilings, clasping hands, clapping backs, his voice always the loudest in any cluster. He thrives on this energy. It feeds him. Guests begin taking their seats, murmurs fading as champagne is topped off. I slide quietly into a seat near the middle, not quite on the fringe, but nowhere near the center of attention. As expected. Across from me, a woman I vaguely recognize from one of Dad's real estate conferences gives me a friendly but uncertain smile. She probably doesn't know who I am, probably thinks I'm someone's assistant or niece. "Are you Franklin's?" she begins. "Daughter," I reply gently. "Elena." Her eyes widen slightly, but she recovers quickly. "Oh, of course. The teacher." There it is again. Not Elena, not educator, not fund founder or investor. Just the teacher. The afterthought. "Nice to meet you," I say anyway. The clinking of a fork against a glass draws everyone's attention. My mother stands near the head of the table in her elegant champagne gown, smiling with grace polished over decades. "If I could have everyone's attention," she says, voice ringing clear, "I just want to thank you all for being here to celebrate the incredible man at the center of this family. Franklin turns 70 today, though you wouldn't know it by looking at him." Polite laughter. My father bows his head slightly in mock humility. He loves this part. "Franklin," she continues, "you've built a life and a family that is something to be proud of." And tonight we're here to honor that. So without further ado, she gestures grandly. The man of the hour. A round of applause swells. My father steps forward, lifting his champagne flute with the practiced ease of a man who's given this speech in different versions 100 times. Thank you, Eleanor, he begins, nodding to my mother. And thank you all for being here tonight. It means the world to me to be surrounded by people I respect, admire, and most importantly have done business with. Laughter ripples through the room. It's a joke, but not really. I've been blessed with 70 years, many of them successful, and some of them even fun, he says with a wink. But the real success is here, my family. He turns slightly toward Anthony first. My son, Anthony, he beams. Running point on our West Coast tech partnerships. Just signed a 7-figure consulting retainer and still manages to beat me at tennis twice a month. Applause. Then Marissa. And my daughter Marissa, our Wall Street warrior. If there's a deal that needs closing or a number that needs bending, she's your girl. She's been named to Forbes' 40 under 40 2 years running. More applause, a few impressed murmurs. And let's not forget Madison, he adds, nodding toward Anthony's fiancée. Best real estate instincts in the business. You sold that Bel Air property in under 2 weeks. Incredible. Madison gives a gracious nod, modest but glowing. And then, silence. My father takes a sip, and for a second, I think maybe, just maybe, he'll surprise me. Maybe he'll mention my work. Even just we're proud of all our kids, something vague but kind. But no. Instead, he smirks just slightly and says, of course not every child chooses the corporate ladder. Some take nobler paths. My youngest, Elena, chose public service. She teaches high school history, with summers off, of course. Laughter again. That carefully composed social laughter, just enough to feel like it's okay to laugh, because it must be harmless. My ears burn. I feel my stomach coil the way it did at 16 when he forgot to show up to my school's honor ceremony. The way it did when he told me, you're too smart to just be a teacher. Elena, like it was a fallback, not a calling. I force a smile, just tight enough to look polite, just soft enough to mask the crack forming under the surface. He raises his glass again, but all jokes aside, I'm a lucky man. And I toast to each of you for being part of this journey. Everyone lifts their flutes and echoes the toast. I lift mine too. Because that's what you do when you're not the favorite. That's what you do when your wins don't fit into their version of success. The room begins to break into conversation again. Dessert will be served soon. I know the rhythm. I've danced this same routine for over a decade. And yet tonight feels different. There's a tension in my chest I haven't felt before. Not just anger, not just hurt. Something deeper, a shift. Like the walls I've built inside me have grown tired of standing, and the truth I've buried might not stay quiet forever. As I set my glass down and reach for the linen napkin in my lap, I hear a man's voice, polished, professional, but lighthearted, cut through the chatter. Actually, Franklin, he says with a chuckle, you might want to thank Elena a little more than you think. The room quiets, curious. I turn toward the voice. It's coming from a man seated 2 tables down, dressed in a slate gray suit with a Bank West lapel pin. I recognize him. His name is David Stein, Sr., Vice President at the regional bank that handled my father's last major deal. My father blinks, confused. Sorry. David smiles casually and leans back in his chair, unaware he's about to detonate a bomb no one saw coming. That $3.5 million bridge loan you received last quarter, he says. It came from one of our private education impact funds. Largest investor in that fund is Elena. Silence. Utter, shattering silence. My father stares at him, mouth slightly open. My siblings freeze. My mother's smile falters. I feel every eye turn toward me, the room swaying like it's been unmoored from reality. And I do what I've always done in moments like this. I breathe, steady, controlled. I reach for my wine glass and take a sip. Then I place it gently back down and look up, meeting my father's eyes for the first time all night. The room had been filled with laughter just seconds ago. Now it's silent, visibly silent. That kind of silence where you can hear someone set down a fork halfway across the table. That kind of silence that feels like a dropped glass in a ballroom. A rupture. I don't move. My hands rest lightly on the edge of my plate, fingers curled around the fabric of the napkin. My back straightens not from defiance, but because instinct tells me don't shrink. Not this time. Across the table, my father is still blinking at David Stein like he's trying to translate a foreign language mid-conversation. His lips part, but no words come. I'm sorry, he finally manages. David chuckles the way people do when they don't know they've just stepped on a landmine. Yeah, it surprised me too, to be honest. I was going through investor portfolios for our education impact sector, impressive stuff, and there she was. Elena Moreno. You're Elena. A few heads turned toward me, some in curiosity, others in something closer to disbelief. I see Madison frown, her mouth slightly open. Anthony shifts in his seat. Marissa stares at me with wide frozen eyes, her wine glass halfway to her lips. I didn't realize she was connected to you when we finalized the bridge loan paperwork, David continues, still smiling. Small world, huh? Franklin clears his throat. His face, normally confident, composed, is taut. That smile he keeps in his back pocket for social grace gone. Elena, he says, voice lower now. What is he talking about? I meet his gaze. I think David answered that already, I say quietly. His eyes narrow, his voice growing sharper. You loaned us that money. Technically, the fund, did I reply, keeping my tone even. I just happen to be its largest stakeholder. A wave of whispers ripples through the room like static electricity. Someone coughs. Someone else murmurs, wow. My mother is frozen beside him, fingers trembling slightly around the stem of her champagne glass. The expression on her face is something I can't place surprise, confusion, maybe even fear, not of me, of what this moment means. Franklin lets out a small, humorless laugh. So let me get this straight, you're telling me you had $3.5 million just sitting around to invest in a private lending vehicle. There it is, not curiosity, not even anger, mockery. And suddenly I'm 13 again, standing in the kitchen holding a science fair trophy while he tells me, well, science is cute, but sales is where the money is. I blink once, calm, measured. I've been building the Lantern Fund for 8 years, I say. It started small, but it grew. I reinvested every penny, focused on impact-driven portfolios, education mostly. Anthony lets out a short, stunned breath. You invest. Actually, I glance at him. Yes. Actually. Madison's eyes are narrowed, calculating. I can already tell she's wondering if she should have invited me to that real estate retreat last year. Marissa, for once, looks like she doesn't have a script. But you're a teacher, Franklin says again louder this time, like it's a courtroom objection. I still am, but how, Dad? I say it not with force, but with finality. You've made it very clear for a long time what you think I do or don't do, so maybe tonight's not the best night to act surprised. His mouth opens, closes, opens again. You let me believe, he says, slowly, voice rising, that I was doing you a favor, that the bank pulled strings for me, that I earned that loan. I let out a breath. You did. The bank approved it based on the strength of your history. I just provided the liquidity, quietly, because that's how I've always operated. But why my mother chimes in, her voice sharp for the first time tonight. Why wouldn't you tell us something like this? Because you never asked. Because every time I tried to explain my fund or my nonprofit partnerships or my board work, and someone brought up a new yacht purchase or Anthony's new app or Marissa's promotion, because the room was never interested in what I cared about. But I don't say any of that. Not yet, because it wasn't about proving anything I say simply. It was about doing the work. Franklin leans back in his chair, almost stunned into stillness. I made a joke about you being a public servant with summers off. More than once I remind him. His eyes dart to the guests as if realizing for the first time that they're all still watching, still listening. Some shift uncomfortably in their seats. A few glance down at their plates. Others pretend to take slow sips of water. One man near the end murmurs to his wife, she's the one who funded it. Seriously, Franklin reaches for his whiskey, gulps it faster than usual. His jaw tightens. Well, he says, voice forced into lightness. Guess the joke's on me, huh? There's a chuckle, a nervous one. It dies in the air. Quite the reversal, he adds, eyes scanning the room. Looks like our little teacher had a few tricks up her sleeve. A few guests laugh politely. But it's too late. The moment has changed. Marissa clears her throat. You never told us. Not once. No one ever asked, I say, my voice still calm. But we assumed, she starts. I know what you assumed. Silence again. The weight in the air is thick now. The kind that makes silverware feel heavier, chairs feel harder. The music from the quartet outside has stopped. My mother sets her glass down carefully, like even the sound of crystal might shatter the tension. Elena, she says, her tone gentler now, we're just surprised. That's all. I nod. I understand. Because I do. They're not just surprised. They're disoriented. They built a story about me that kept me small, not maliciously, but conveniently. I was the humble one, the simple one, the one who didn't need the attention or praise. That made it easier for them to shine without question. Easier to overlook me without guilt. But now I've taken up space in the story. And they don't know where to put me. Franklin clears his throat again, preparing to recover. Well, he says, raising his glass slightly, let's toast to the unexpected, shall we? A few hands lift half-heartedly, but no one meets anyone's eyes. I remain still, my glass on the table. Because this time, I'm not going to make it easier for them. This time, I'm not going to laugh off the joke. Across the table, David Stein finally seems to realize the gravity of what he's revealed. He glances at me with an awkward smile, then back to his plate. I don't blame him. He didn't break anything. He just flicked on the lights. And now, everyone's seeing me clearly for the first time. I've always found it strange how quickly noise returns after a moment like that. As if the room, embarrassed by its own silence, rushes to fill the gap with clinking glasses, forced laughter, and the soft hum of resumed conversation. But beneath it all, beneath the surface show of ease, there's tension now. Thick and undeniable, my father tries to steer the energy back with some offhand comment about the stock market. Marissa laughs too loudly at something Anthony says. Guests shift in their seats, grateful for the opportunity to pretend they weren't just witness to a power shift no one saw coming. But me, I sit still. I listen. I've learned that silence has a shape. It's not emptiness, it's weight. It presses into your lungs, your bones, your memory. And it remembers. I think about all the times I sat at this table and kept quiet. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I'd already learned what happened when I tried. The blank stares. The polite nods. The immediate pivot to something shinier. Something they deemed more impressive. They never asked about my students. Never asked what it was like to spend nights working with kids whose parents worked 2 jobs and still couldn't afford new shoes. They never asked how many scholarships I'd helped create. How many classrooms I'd rebuilt. How many teachers I'd trained through my funds workshops, some of whom had been ready to quit before they found support. They never asked what it felt like to sit with a 16-year-old girl who didn't think she'd make it through the year and then get a letter from her 2 years later thanking me from her dorm room at college. They never asked why I still drive that old Corolla even when I could afford something 10 times nicer. They assumed it was because I couldn't afford anything else. They never asked what I loved, what made me feel alive. They asked what I made, where I lived, what I wore, as if those answers told the whole story. When I first started building the Lantern Fund, I was scared. I didn't have anyone to bounce ideas off of. I stayed up late reading case studies on microgrants, diving into financial models with YouTube tutorials on one screen and spreadsheets on the other. There was no applause, no panel of judges, no dad standing behind me with a proud hand on my shoulder. Just me, quiet, focused, hungry to create something that mattered. By the time the fund crossed $1 million in assets, I thought about telling them. Maybe during last year's Christmas dinner. But then someone made a joke about teachers needing government assistance, and I remembered why I stayed quiet. They weren't ready to hear my story if it didn't fit their version of success. And part of me, part I'm not proud of, wanted to keep it from them, not out of spite, but because it was mine, untouched by their expectations, safe from their commentary, a part of me that existed outside of the shadow they always cast. It wasn't about revenge, it was about survival. Elena. I blink. It's Marissa. She's leaned across the table, her voice lowered. The noise around us buzzes like static, distant and irrelevant. Why didn't you tell us, she asks. I pause, then shrug. You never asked. She opens her mouth, but nothing comes out. She leans back in her chair, thoughtful for the first time in a long time. Anthony says nothing at all. He's scrolling through his phone, but he hasn't touched it in 5 full minutes. Madison is watching me with new eyes, calculating ones like I've become a variable she didn't prepare for. And Franklin, he's stopped talking. That alone is a victory. He's still nursing his second Scotch eyes, fixed somewhere above the centerpiece, like he's trying to rewrite the script in his head. In his world, the roles are fixed. The oldest son is the empire builder. The middle daughter is the shark. The youngest was supposed to be cute, noble, predictable. Not this. Not a financier, not a founder, not someone whose portfolio has influenced more policy meetings than he'll ever know. I don't feel triumphant. I feel tired. But under that tiredness is something else. Relief. For the first time in years, I'm no longer pretending. I glance down at my plate, cold steak, untouched salad, and stand slowly. Elena, my mother says, her voice tight. Where are you going? I turn to her. I need some air, I say gently. I'll be back. I step outside into the night, letting the door swing shut behind me. The sounds of the dinner fade into a muffled blur. Out here, the air is cool and dry. The sky is clear, the stars faint but visible. I walk toward the back of the property, past the trimmed hedges and the glowing lanterns, until I reach the edge of the garden. I sit on the low stone wall and breathe. For once, I'm not hiding, not explaining, not defending, just being. Behind me, I hear the door creak open again. Footsteps, light ones. Elena. I turn. It's Marissa. She hesitates before stepping closer. Mind if I sit? I gesture to the spot beside me. She lowers herself down, smoothing her dress. For a moment, we both just sit, silent, like we're 12 again, hiding behind the bushes after getting in trouble for sneaking Oreos before dinner. I didn't know, she finally says. I know. We assumed. She stops herself. I assumed a lot. I nod. She picks at her thumbnail, but I'm listening now. That surprises me and softens something in me. Then I'll tell you, I say. We sit quietly on the low stone wall, Marissa and I, as the night stretches out around us. It's the first time in years we've shared this kind of moment. No competition, no commentary, just space. She's not ready to hear the whole story, not yet. But she's listening now. That's a start. A few minutes pass before a server appears at the edge of the garden with a polite cough. Ms. Moreno, your father's looking for you. They're about to serve dessert. Of course he is. I nod and rise, brushing the creases from my dress. Marissa falls in step beside me. The air is cooler now, and I can feel the weight of what's waiting for me behind those patio doors. The party has shifted. I can sense it like a barometer dropping before a storm. As we re-enter the dining room, the atmosphere feels tighter, controlled, choreographed again. But this time, there's a slight edge of unease under the surface. People smile too brightly. Conversations hitched in mid-sentence when we pass. I catch a few heads turning toward me, then quickly away. My father is standing now, his glass raised ready for the second act of his speech. His smile tightens when he sees me. There she is, he says, voice ringing too cheerfully. We were just about to begin again. Couldn't do it without our mystery financier. A few people chuckle, unsure if it's safe. I slip into my seat. Marissa takes hers beside me. I've got one last thing to say. Franklin continues, waving a hand toward a suited man 3 seats down. But I think David here actually beat me to it. David Stein looks up mid-bite of creme brulee, blinking at the sudden spotlight. Oh, he says, brushing napkin crumbs from his mouth. I didn't mean to interrupt earlier, just thought it was funny small world, you know. Franklin nods with a smile stretched so tightly, it's practically translucent. Tell everyone what you told me earlier, David. David chuckles, oblivious. Well, all I said was that it turns out your daughter here, Elena, is one of our largest private investors in the Lantern Fund. In fact, she's the lead silent investor in the Education Impact Fund that backed your $3.5 million bridge loan last quarter. He takes another bite of dessert like he's just shared a fun fact. The silence hits instantly, again, and this time it lands even heavier. My mother sets down her spoon slowly. Anthony's eyebrows knit together in confusion. Madison sits straighter, scanning my face for a cue. Even the waitstaff has stilled, hovering at the edge of the room, unsure whether to pour or retreat. Franklin's face changes. The polished mask of the charming patriarch fractures just slightly around the eyes. A beat passes. Then another. You're saying, he says carefully, the money that saved my company came from my daughter? David nods, cheerfully swallowing. Indirectly, yes, through her fund. She's pretty impressive. I meet my father's eyes, and this time, I don't look away. He sits down slowly, not from grace, but because his knees may not trust him to stand much longer. You knew, he asks me, voice low. I knew, I say, evenly. You never said a word. You never asked. He opens his mouth, but there's no quick retort this time. No chuckle, no quip. Just a flicker of something unfamiliar, vulnerability. He starts, but stops. He's not used to this. To me. You let me believe I got that loan from the bank, he says finally. That they backed me on merit. They did, I reply. The paperwork speaks for itself. I didn't ask for special treatment. I just believed in the potential. Quietly. He scoffs. But why? Why not tell me? I take a breath, feeling every eye in the room land on me. Because I didn't want the money to be the reason you finally saw me. A ripple passes through the air. You've spent years acting like I chose the least interesting life possible. I continue, my voice calm but no longer soft. You praised Anthony for chasing startups, Marissa for closing seven-figure deals. You made jokes about my summers off my car, my apartment. You never once asked what I was building. But you're a teacher, he says, the words falling flat now. I still am, I say. And while I was grading papers and coaching after-school clubs, I also taught myself about nonprofit finance, impact investing. I built a fund to help schools' communities. And when I saw your company struggling, I saw an opportunity to help, not to prove anything, just because I could. Anthony whistles under his breath. Marissa stares straight ahead, hands folded in her lap. My mother's fingers tighten around the stem of her glass, her knuckles white. Franklin leans back in his chair. Well, he says slowly, this is certainly a surprise. David, sensing tension, raises his glass weakly. To unexpected revelations, a few guests chuckle. Others glance at one another, clearly unsure what side of the story they're supposed to be on. I don't raise my glass. Instead, I take a sip of wine. Slow. Intentional. My pulse slows. Because the truth is, I didn't need this moment. Not for revenge, not for recognition. I just wanted the weight of invisibility to lift. And now it has. I wasn't hiding, I say, voice quiet but firm. They just never looked. By the time the candles on the dessert table are lit, the party has shifted into something unrecognizable. The warmth is gone. The easy confidence, the rhythm of practiced conversations, all of it replaced by a low-grade buzz of uncertainty. The kind that hums just beneath the surface, like an engine overheating in the distance. And me, I'm still sitting in the same seat, watching it all unfold. Still the same woman in the same dress. But now they see me differently. Or at least, they're trying to. Across the table, Anthony leans forward, resting his elbows on the edge of his plate. So, Elena, he says casually, too casually, what kind of returns are you seeing on that education impact stuff, like actual ROI? Madison cuts in before I can answer. Wait, is that a 501c3 thing? Or are you managing a hybrid structure? They're trying, but not for the right reasons. Not because they care about what I do, but because they can smell value on me now. I smile politely. It's complicated, and honestly, I'd love to just enjoy dessert tonight. Madison nods, slowly disappointed. Anthony takes the hint, but others are less subtle. Two guests from a private banking firm approach champagne glasses in hand, introducing themselves like we're at a networking brunch. I had no idea you were involved in philanthro-capital models, one of them says, already reaching for his business card. Such an underappreciated sector, the other adds as if that's the compliment I've been waiting my whole life to hear. I'm not looking for new investors, I say gently, but thank you. They retreat after a few more awkward seconds, leaving behind a slightly sticky sense of recalculation. Behind me, I can hear my mother's voice whispering something sharp and fast to Franklin, who still hasn't moved from his seat. His scotch glass is empty now, just the melting clink of ice swirling slowly inside. Eventually he stands, straightens his jacket, and walks over to me with a forced smile. You could have told me, he says. I could have, I reply. We could have made this bigger. Structured it, marketed it. You have no idea what kind of traction you could have gained with my network. I look at him. Truly look at him. Dad, this isn't a startup pitch. It's not about scaling. It's about solving problems. He pauses, clearly trying to find the right language to bring this back into his world. But you have momentum now. And press opportunities. If we framed this correctly, there's a real branding play. Stop. He goes quiet. I don't need help turning it into something you recognize. I'm not building for image. I'm building for impact. That's the difference between us. His mouth twitches, frustration, confusion, maybe even embarrassment. But underneath that is something else, discomfort. The kind that comes when the story you've believed for decades starts to fall apart. Well, he says stiffly, you've certainly made an impression tonight. That much is true. I nod and excuse myself, standing slowly and placing my napkin on the table. Elena, my mother, calls from a few chairs away. The guests will be leaving soon. Stay and say goodbye at least. I glance back at her. I think I've said enough. I walk past the flower arrangements, past the tray of petit fours, past the valet coordinator giving last call instructions over a headset. I keep going through the French doors and into the night air again. I don't cry. I don't fume. I breathe. It's the first real breath I've taken since I stepped into this house earlier tonight. The garden is empty now. The string lights still glow softly above, casting golden reflections on the stone tiles beneath my feet. I find the same wall from before, sit down again, and stare up at the sky. The stars haven't changed. A minute passes, then another. Then I hear footsteps, soft, hesitant. It's Marissa. Again. She approaches slowly, arms crossed, not from anger, but from something else. Vulnerability, maybe. You really didn't want anyone to know, she asks. I shake my head. It's not that I didn't want anyone to know. I just didn't want the knowing to change everything. Well, she says, sitting beside me, it did. We sit in silence again. This time, it's heavier. But not in the way you think I add after a beat. They're not suddenly proud of me. They're just curious. Because now there's a number attached. A metric they understand. She sighs, pulling her shawl tighter around her shoulders. That's how we were raised. I know. She glances sideways at me. What you said to Dad, that it wasn't about scaling or branding. That was gutsy. It wasn't meant to be gutsy, I reply. It was just true. She chuckles lightly. I think I forgot what truth sounds like in that house. I glance toward the patio where the shadows of guests still flicker. Where my father likely still holds court, trying to spin the night into something manageable. Marissa bumps her shoulder lightly into mine. They'll come around, maybe not the way you want, but eventually. I'm not waiting on them anymore, I say. She doesn't reply right away. Then I always thought you were quiet because you didn't have much to say. I smile faintly. No, I was quiet because no one was really listening. She nods. And for once, she doesn't argue. We sit a while longer. The air is cool but not unkind. The buzz of the house recedes behind us like distant static. The stars blink above us, steady, indifferent. Eventually, she stands. You coming back in? She asks. I shake my head. Not tonight. She hesitates, then leans forward and kisses the top of my head, like she used to when we were kids, and she was still the big sister who watched over me. I'm glad they know, she whispers, even if they don't get it. I watch her go. When the door closes behind her, I close my eyes and listen to the silence again. It doesn't hurt this time. It holds me. The next morning, the house is quiet. I stayed the night reluctantly, only because the thought of driving back to my apartment after everything was too much. My childhood bedroom hasn't changed much. Same floral wallpaper, same bookshelf stacked with the history paperbacks no one ever read but me. The same narrow twin bed with a headboard my father once said was just practical enough. The sun filters in softly through gauzy curtains. I sit up slowly, my body still heavy from the night before, not from wine or lack of sleep, but from the weight of being seen for the first time in years. And not quite knowing what to do with it. Downstairs, I can hear the quiet clang of plates, the murmur of my mother giving instructions to the cleaning staff. There's a note on my dresser, breakfast on the patio if you want it. Assume, Mom. I glance at it, then set it down. Instead, I grab a sweater slip-on shoes and step into the hallway. I don't make it 10 steps before I nearly run into Marissa. She's in leggings and a loose sweatshirt, her hair pulled up into a messy bun. No makeup, no phone in hand. Just Marissa. The version I almost never see. Hey, she says, blinking. You're up early. I shrug. Didn't sleep much. She nods. Me neither. A pause. Then she gestures toward the upstairs sitting room, a space our mother used to reserve for guests and arguments. Can we talk? She asks. I follow her inside. We sit across from each other, two grown women in the room where we once fought over nail polish and magazine subscriptions. She curls her legs underneath her. I sit straight-backed, unsure of what's coming. I wanted to say something, she starts, without everyone else around. I nod, waiting. I think I owe you an apology. That surprises me. She takes a breath. I never pitied you, Elena. Not exactly. But I did assume you needed help, that you weren't thriving, that maybe you'd settled. And I said a lot of things, jokes, suggestions, offers that I see now were just me projecting my own version of success onto you. I say nothing yet. I want to hear where this goes. I didn't know what you were building, she continues, because I didn't bother to ask. You didn't make it flashy. You weren't posting about it or leading with your resume at every dinner. So I dismissed it. Her voice doesn't crack, but it softens. I'm sorry, she says. I stare at her for a long moment, and then I say, thank you. It's quiet again, but not uncomfortable. You know, I continue, I always thought you had it all figured out. You were so good at being the daughter they wanted, confident, strategic, polished. She laughs dryly. They wanted wins. I just gave them ones they could understand. We sit with that for a while. I didn't keep it from you because I didn't trust you. I add, I kept it private because I didn't want it to be the only thing you saw when you looked at me. Or worse, because I was afraid you'd think I was trying to compete. I probably would have, she admits. Back then. I exhale slowly. You know what stung the most, I say, almost surprised I'm saying it aloud. It wasn't the jokes. Or the way Dad would introduce me as his teacher daughter with a little laugh. It was how no one ever asked me anything real. You asked about my rent, my car, my love life, but never once about what I loved. She winces. You're right. I wasn't looking for applause, I add. Just curiosity. She nods again. I guess I forgot you were the smartest person in the house growing up. That one lands differently. You're not so bad yourself, I say. She smiles. The real kind. The kind I haven't seen in years. I think we forgot how to be sisters, she says softly. I think we let roles replace relationship, I answer. Marissa leans back against the arm of the chair and stares out the window. So what now? I don't know, I say. I'm not expecting overnight healing. I just don't want to keep pretending anymore. With any of you? She nods again. That's fair. There's another pause, then she tilts her head toward me. Can I ask you something honestly? Of course. Do you think I'm shallow? The question catches me off guard. I study her for a moment. I think you've spent your whole life being exactly what everyone needed you to be, I say. But I don't think you ever stop to ask what you need. She swallows hard, looks down. I think we both did that, I add. We sit in silence for another long stretch. And in that quiet, something unspoken softens between us. Not resolved, not erased, but softened. You ever think about getting out? she asks suddenly. Out of what? The system, the performance, the weight of them, all the time, I admit. She glances over. Maybe we should start our own holiday. No speeches, no power games, just pancakes and pajamas. I laugh, and no networking, absolutely none. We rise from our seats at the same time. She hesitates, then steps forward and hugs me, not the polite, obligatory kind we do at birthdays, but something slower, longer. I'm proud of you, she says quietly. Not because of the number, but because you built something that mattered. I feel the lump rise in my throat before I can stop it. Thanks, I whisper. That means more than you know. We break apart. She walks toward the hallway, then turns back. By the way, she says with a teasing smile, you still snore. You still talk in your sleep. Fair. She disappears down the stairs, and for the first time since I arrived at this house, I don't feel like an outsider standing in the wrong room. I feel like someone they'll have to learn to see. By Monday morning, the mansion, the garden lights, the whispered judgment, it all feels like it happened in a different universe. I'm back in my classroom, back where the floors creak slightly when too many kids lean to one side, where the paint peels in the back corner by the window, where the walls are covered in student posters of the Harlem Renaissance and the Bill of Rights hand-drawn and slightly crooked, perfect in their imperfection. Room 214, Midtown High. It smells like dry erase markers and morning coffee, and it feels like home. At 7:52 a.m., there's already a small crowd waiting for me. Miss Moreno, did you finish grading our mock trials? That's Jordan, sophomore, unapologetically loud, aspiring future lawyer or possibly senator depending on the day. Patience, I say, unlocking the door. Justice takes time. He groans dramatically. Behind him, a few others chuckle and file in. Did you see the article? Another student, Tasha asks as she drops her backpack by her usual seat. You're on Edu now? Like on the homepage? I blink. What? She spins her Chromebook around. There it is, an article with the headline, The Quiet Power of Teachers, How One Public School Educator is Funding Change Behind the Scenes. My picture's not in it, just a stock photo of a classroom, but still someone noticed. I didn't know you ran a whole fund, Tasha says. That's kind of amazing. I shrug, suddenly shy. It's not really about me. That's what makes it cool, Jordan says. You do all this and don't even brag. I open my mouth to say something, then close it. Because really, what else is there to say? Later that day, during my prep period, I sit at my desk sipping lukewarm coffee when Principal Daniels knocks lightly on the doorframe. He's a kind man, late 40s, slightly graying around the temples, always wears navy or gray suits like he's still getting used to being in charge. He steps inside, holding an envelope. Elena, he says, smiling, got something for you. I raise an eyebrow. He places the envelope on my desk. I open it carefully. Inside is an invitation printed on heavy cardstock, National Educator Summit, Washington, D.C., keynote nominee Elena Moreno. I blink. I didn't apply for this. You didn't need to, Daniel says. They called me, said your name came up in multiple funding discussions related to underserved schools and public-private partnerships. Apparently, you've made quite the impression. I exhale, surprised, a little shaken. He smiles gently. You belong in that room, Elena, whether you believe it or not. I nod slowly. Thank you. After he leaves, I sit for a long moment, envelope in hand. Not long ago, the only rooms I wanted to be invited into were the ones at my father's table. I thought validation came from being applauded by people who never understood what I was building. But now, this is enough. More than enough. On Thursday, I drive to my old high school across town. The building still has the same brick facade, the same tiny windows in the front office. The receptionist doesn't recognize me, but when I say my name, she waves me through. The principal, a tall woman named Dr. Lena Shore, greets me with a firm handshake. We chat briefly, and I walk with her to the science wing. A few days ago, I anonymously donated the funds to rebuild their science lab. Brand new workstations, updated safety equipment, a digital microscope setup, no press release, no naming rights, just a quiet email with wiring instructions and a note. Every student deserves to touch the future with both hands. When we step inside, the construction crew is still working, but I can see the bones of what's coming to life. Dr. Shore watches me. Are you sure you don't want a plaque or something? Even just initials, I shake my head. Let the kids think it just appeared. She grins. You must have had a good teacher once. I nod. I had one great one. She changed everything. She studies me a beat. You know you don't look like a millionaire. I laugh. Good. That evening, I sit on my small balcony wrapped in a fleece throw sipping tea. The street below hums with city noise car horns, distant barking, a couple arguing about takeout. It's imperfect, chaotic. And mine. I scroll through my email, deleting junk until one subject line makes me pause, request for interview. The teachers who lead quiet revolutions. I smile faintly, then hit archive, because I don't need to be anyone's story right now. I already know who I am. As I close the laptop, I hear the ping of a text. It's from Marissa. Can I come by this weekend? I'm bringing pancakes, no pretense. Just syrup. I laugh. Type, back only if they're buttermilk. She replies with a heart emoji and a thumbs up. I lean back in my chair, gaze up at the sliver of moon hanging low above the rooftops. Success doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it comes with quiet emails, messy classrooms, and buttermilk pancakes. And sometimes that's exactly enough. The hum of the engines is soft, almost soothing. Outside my window, clouds stretch like fields of silk, an endless sea of white beneath a pale blue sky. Somewhere over the Atlantic, I press my forehead gently to the cool glass and close my eyes. It's quiet here. Not the kind of silence I used to dread, heavy, cold, dismissive. This silence is earned, chosen, the kind that comes after the noise fades and you finally hear your own voice again. The plane is bound for Geneva, not for vacation, not for a photo op. I'm headed to a global education roundtable hosted by the United Nations Impact Partnerships Office. A summit where real change is discussed in boardrooms that don't care about last names or Instagram followers. I didn't get here because of my family. I got here in spite of the years I spent trying to earn their approval. My passport rests in the seat pocket. My boarding pass still has the coffee stain from the airport cafe. I glance at it now, the destination printed in neat black ink like it's always been obvious. Geneva, Switzerland. Even now, it makes me pause. 3 years ago, I was begging the district for $2,500 to replace water-damaged books. Now I'm consulting with ministries of education across 3 continents. Quietly, intentionally, still teaching full-time. The world didn't need me to be louder, just steady. The flight attendant walks by, offers a gentle smile. I return it, then glance down at the notebook open on my tray. I've written half a speech, scribbled ideas about how localized microfunding is transforming dropout rates in rural districts. Not flashy, but real. I sip my tea and stare out again. I think about that night at my father's party, about the way the room fell silent when they learned the loan had come from me, about the way some people shifted their tone, started calling me impressive because they finally had a number to attach to my name. $3.5 million. That was what it took for them to listen. They finally saw the number. But I never needed them to. I just needed to stop hiding. I think of my students. The ones who bring me drawings of their dream schools. The ones who ask me if it's true that someone like them could be on a board of directors one day. The ones who still believe that kindness is a kind of strength. They're why I do this. Not for the applause, not even for the recognition, but because someone needs to clear the path. Quietly, so the next kid doesn't have to ask permission to matter. I reach for my phone and scroll through the gallery. There's a photo of the new science lab at my old high school. Bright white counters, state-of-the-art equipment, no plaque, no inscription, just a caption from the principal. They screamed when they saw the microscopes. Thought they were dreaming. They weren't. And neither am I. A buzz pulls me out of the moment. Another text, this one from Jordan, my mock trial student. Miss M, we won the city semifinal. You'd have been proud we quoted Justice Ginsburg. And you in closing, I smile so wide I forget I'm on a plane. They quoted me. I tap out a quick reply. So proud of you. The world needs your voice. Now go win state. And maybe don't quote me next time. Ginsburg is safer. I slip the phone back into my bag, then I reach for my pen. I write a single line on the blank page at the end of my notebook. I fund classrooms, not cocktail parties, and I underline it twice. This is what success looks like. A classroom buzzing with energy, a student who dares to dream, a sister who brings pancakes instead of judgments, a life lived off stage but fully in purpose. The speaker chime pings overhead. We'll be starting our descent into Geneva shortly, the pilot announces. Local temperature is a cool 12 degrees Celsius. I gather my things, close my notebook, secure my tray. As we begin to descend, I press my hand against the window and look down at the clouds parting. The earth below is waking up. And somewhere in that distant city, a round table waits. Another room I once thought was beyond me. Another door that didn't need to be kicked down just quietly walked through when I was ready. My name is Elena Moreno. I am a teacher, a funder, a builder, a sister, a woman who no longer waits to be seen. As the wheels touch down and the sky brightens, I think of you. Whoever you are, wherever you're listening from. Let me ask you something. What about you? Have you ever been underestimated because of how you looked or what you chose or how softly you spoke? If so, you're not alone. Drop a comment. Tell me your story. And remember, the most important validation is the one you give yourself.